Damn. It has been 20 years since this game came out at the time of recording this. I find that hard to believe, honestly. My first memory with it was when my dad was playing the hell out of it on release, and I thought it was the coolest shit that my 3-year-old brain had ever seen before. However, I didn't play DMC 1 until 2012 when it came out for the HD collection, but never beat it until 2018 because of how bad I was at it. Now, 3 years ago, I was not too big on DMC 1. However, I replayed it a couple days ago and don't really feel the same way as I did back then for the most part. Still has its flaws about it, but a bunch of good about it too. Throughout this video, I pretty much want to give my thoughts on this classic game now that I've sat down and gave it another go. And it won't end here for me. I plan to go over the entire mainline series, including the reboot, in the following months. I should also mention that this game, DMC2 and DMC3, will be recorded on the PS4 version of the HD collection, just to make things a little bit easier because I do not have a recording device for the PS2 or PS3, or else I would do them on them said versions. So yeah, let's head right into the game that pioneered a whole genre.
Let's rock, baby.
Devil May Cry.
So a quick synopsis of the story. The game starts off by giving us a rundown about the legendary Dark Knight Sparta, who fought in a war between the human world and the demon world 2,000 years ago, seeking justice for the human world. A little after this dialogue, cuts to a woman named Trish who falls from the sky, ends up in front of a building called Devil May Cry. Then it cuts again inside of a building, and this is where we meet our hero Dante. Trish then bursts through the front door on a motorcycle, talks about how Dante lost his mother and brother 20 years ago to evil, and how he's also the son of Sparta. And then after this, she attacks Dante, but then Dante overpowers her and ends up with the upper hand in this situation. So then Trish gets up after being attacked and states that she's not the enemy, even though she attacked him a minute ago, and now she needs Dante's help to stop the underworld. But when Trish takes off her sunglasses, it shocks Dante that she looks a lot like his mother, Eve. After another cut, Trish goes over with Dante that Mundus, the main bad guy of this game, was resurrected 20 years ago because for the longest time, Sparta sealed him away, and now Mundus plans to start taking over the human world on a certain island called Belay Island. And then when they get to said island, Trish just kind of leaves Dante out of nowhere, and the story ends up pretty straightforward from there. The story has Dante go through multiple bosses / normal enemies and quote-unquote puzzles. I say puzzles, but it's really just like, hey, take this key item to another place you've been to before or a new area. It's okay in some regards and everything, but it's just kind of whatever to me. Anyway, there are some bosses as well that you face throughout the game, main bosses. And these bosses are Phantom, a big ass lava spider, Nilo Angelo, a Dark Knight, Griffin, a big bird, and Nightmare, a bioweapon. I like all of their designs except the blob of shit right here. Yeah, he looks awesome. It's not like he has character or a purpose anyway like the other bosses. Nightmare's just in the damn way so you can kick his ass. So, you fight all 4 of these bosses multiple times through the story, beat them, and learn that all of them serve under Mundus, the big bad dude mentioned a few minutes ago. And to be completely honest, I think the most interesting one is definitely Nilo Angelo, because everyone knows that has played Devil May Cry 3, which is spoilers if you haven't played that, knows that Nilo Angelo is Virgil, Dante's brother. You notice something's off about him because he keeps reacting to the amulet that Dante has because one was given to both of them as a child from their mother Eve. Then after fighting him for the final time, with both amulets and Sparta's sword, the Force Edge, it creates a legendary sword that looks wicked as hell just called Sparta. And then as soon as this happens, Dante then sets off to finally get rid of Mundus once and for all, until you gotta fight the blob of shit 2 more times and learn during the final fight with Nightmare that Trish was a spy for Mundus. Dante though prevails against Nightmare and saves Trish from a falling boulder. Dante tells her to stay away from him because he'll kill her next time, and Trish gets a message from Mundus telling her that she knows what happens when she fails. After fighting demons and going into the underworld, Dante ends up finding Mundus with Trish. Dante saves Trish, but then Trish saves Dante in return, then she dies. Dante gets pissed and has a crazy ass fight with Mundus. Luckily, Dante prevails in the end, comes back to where Trish was at and says the most memorable line in all of Devil May Cry.
I should have saved you. I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light!
Sadly though, Dante does not have time to mourn though, because after having beaten Mundus, the whole island is collapsing and Dante needs to leave, but before he does, he leaves Sparta there with Trish because it's supposed to represent mother and father coming together one last time with, you know, Trish looking exactly like Eve. Dante then is trying to get out when out of nowhere the floor collapses and we see a deformed Mundus coming after Dante. When the two are fighting each other for a couple minutes, nothing is really working on Mundus, almost like he's immortal. However, Trish pops up and lends some of her power to Dante. She wasn't dead. Then with the power of anime, Dante beats Mundus with 2 lightning-infused bullets, and they get out of there with the most plot-convenient thing I've ever seen. The plane was in the room where Dante fell from is just magically still intact from the fall, but alrighty then. So they get out of there Resident Evil style with riding off into the sunset while everything blows up behind them and bam, into the game. Then at the very end of the game we get a funny little cutscene to where they change the name from Devil May Cry to Devils Never Cry. And then Trish and Dante come out and they got another job, and yeah, that's pretty much where the game ends. Now, let me start by saying that the story is alright. It is kind of your typical run-of-the-mill, kill big bad dude to save the world type of story. It doesn't really add anything too significant to gaming story-wise, and as everyone knows, the voice acting has aged poorly.
How much longer are you going to keep zapping?
There's no need to worry, right? 'Cause the world has the legendary Dark Knight Dante and his sidekick.
But in some regard, it has charm. Not the worst, but certainly not the best either. I'm sorry if I came off as harsh before, but I have a great time with the story though as well. I have a fun time watching Dante interact with the demon bosses and learn more about Dante throughout the game. Dante is a cool, badass type of dude, but needs to be serious in serious situations, if you catch my drift. You can tell with him that he's been through this stuff before. Trish is a good side character, and honestly, I wish we got to see more of her because she's awesome as Dante is. Like I said before as well, I like all the demon bosses and every one of them has a purpose, but the one that stands out the most is Nilo Angelo. He has the most interesting backstory out of all the demons to learn about throughout this straightforward story. Because like I stated before, this is Dante's brother Virgil, and after he disappears into nothing when you fight him the last time, it makes you question, like, how did he end up like this? What happened? Did he take a dark path? Was he possessed? These questions wouldn't be answered until later games come out, which sucked for people who wanted an answer, but I think it added to that mystery of him. All in all, this game's story is like a double-edged sword for me. Just a typical story all around, but a good cast of characters really give the story some leeway. And hell, I can't even fault them that much. I mean, this is the first game in the series, which I've said that before as well. They gave a really good effort in the story and making a completely new IP they've never done before. Speaking of IP, let's get into the meat of the game, the gameplay. So the game is set in a mission structure, kind of like some modern examples I can think of is like Neo 2 or Monster Hunter, where you go and you select a mission and then you do the said mission. It's kind of like that in a way, and then you can power up and obtain new skills and get items that you need for the said mission that you're doing. And the gameplay is fast and fun. It makes you feel like a badass pulling off sick looking moves with each weapon, even if the button inputs are not all too hard to master in DMC1. The melee weapons you get throughout the game are the Force Edge, the very first weapon, Alistair, Ifrit, and mentioned in the story section, Sparta. The ones I used most through my playthrough were Alistair and Ifrit because I honestly found Sparta and especially the Force Edge to be lacking. Because the main drawback to these two weapons were not having Devil Trigger. Now, to anyone who hasn't played this game, Devil Trigger helps out a lot during combat. It regens your health if it's getting low, and your attacks have a lot more power behind them, including the guns as well. It was just way better to have Ifrit and Alistair on constantly for me personally. Also, Force Edge and Sparta have the exact same moveset as Alistair, so there's that. The only thing I could see anyone using these two weapons for were a cool challenge, like a no Devil Trigger challenge, or the designs of them, but, you know, I digress. Because I will admit, they do look cool. However, let's switch over to the guns. The guns you get are the iconic handguns, first of all, Ebony and Ivory. A shotgun. Grenade launcher. Needle gun. And finally, the Nightmare Beta. The only gun I have a problem with is the needle gun because it is by far the most useless weapon in the game to me. You use it in 3 to 4 parts in the game, and all of these horrible first-person sections underwater, you know what I'm talking about if you played the game. You cannot use the gun outside of these sections, so all I can ask is, why? Other than that, the rest of the guns are awesome, honestly. Ebony and Ivory always and will be awesome. The shotgun is a good mixture of the handguns and the grenade launcher, power-wise. The grenade launcher is slow with the rate of fire, but kicks some ass. Same thing goes with the Nightmare Beta. It's slow, and if you use it right, it is extremely good. Now, there are some other things I want to mention with the gameplay. These are these things called secret missions. And secret missions are scattered throughout this game and given certain tasks to the player, like kill these enemies in a certain amount of time, or jump off these enemies to obtain a blue orb fragment at the very top of the last enemy. Now, as much as I like the different weapons and such, and these secret missions are cool, we're going to switch gears a little bit to some of the other things that kind of bring down the gameplay experience for me. So first things first, the camera during and out of combat. Growing up, I always saw a bunch of people loving this game, but they hated the damn camera in certain situations. I feel the same way. See, I can tolerate the camera when I'm fighting normal enemies. It does switch around sometimes, but it's okay. I think where the camera does not work like 60% of the time is the boss fights. Especially the first boss fight with Nightmare. God damn. They should have honestly not used the Resident Evil fixed camera angles for this game because it does not flow really good with the heavy based action game. And if you don't know what fixed camera angles are, to put it simple, is a preset view of the camera that will stay in the position like that where they were programmed for the next camera angle to be. It works in Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3 because them games are 50% gameplay and 50% puzzles. Devil May Cry 1, not so much. It makes certain fights, like the bosses, as stated before, not flow so well as they could have in like a free camera, which they finally completely did in Devil May Cry 5, and I gotta give them props for that. Because although this game is challenging on its own right, it shows in them boss fights that the camera is the damn boss fight in itself. Another thing that really gets on my nerves in this game, and is probably the most annoying thing to me, is having to press the pause button every single time, select a weapon you want to use, equip it, and then get back to the action. This does not only break the immersion for me, but it also has a bad flow on the combat. And this kind of annoyance comes from probably because I'm so used to 3, 4, and 5 having to switch weapons constantly to keep up your style. And you know, it's fun like that too. And it flows better. Luckily, they did fix half of the issue in 2. I say half because you can only switch the guns on the fly in that game. That game still sucks, but we'll get to that another day. Could you imagine if you were able to switch your weapons on the fly in DMC1? Damn, that would be awesome. Like, honestly. It would give the player to experiment more. It's just very odd they decided to go with swapping weapons in a menu when this game is about knowing when the enemies are going to attack and having fast reflexes, especially on the harder difficulties. Also, the very last issue I have with this is no lock-on in this game. For me, this issue is like a double-edged sword. In my playthrough recently, it wasn't a big deal because you can have a blast still kicking ass. You can still pull off combos that look flashy and all that jazz. However, it is annoying in big groups when every enemy is trying to hit you. You can't select the one you want to fight because it does it automatically for you, which kind of blows. But it's okay. I say it's annoying, but it really... I'm just kind of like with it, so it's just kind of whatever. But the gameplay overall is flawed, but it still shines in some credit where credit is due. It laid down a foundation and they gave it all they got. At the end of the day, coming back to this game after 3 years shed some new light on it for me, personally. I had a very enjoyable experience this time around. Yeah, it's rough around the edges to today's standards, but I think it holds up exceptionally well. Other stuff I liked about the gameplay, well, you know, for one, my favorite thing about this game, honestly, is the soundtrack. God, do I love it. You got bangers across the board, and my personal favorites like Public Enemy, the battle theme, the second battle theme, Lock and Load, Griffin's theme, Flock Off, And finally, the credits theme, Seeds of Love. And the last thing I can think of off the top of my head is definitely the atmosphere. I mean, hell, when you get into the first mission, you can already tell that this game is going to have a dark and creepy vibe to it, and that's what I love about it. It makes sense because this game was the first prototype for Resident Evil 4. But all in all, what an experience to come back to this game, honestly. Great soundtrack, great characters, solid gameplay, the whole 9 yards. I did have some complaints, but the good outweigh it, honestly. For a first attempt at something new and fresh at the time, this really blew people's minds with the shows of the reviews, honestly, like on Metacritic and whatnot. I believe as well that this game paved the way for some other great games in the genre that people love, myself included, like God of War, Nier, Metal Gear Rising, and especially Bayonetta, because the creator for this game, Hideki Kamiya, made Devil May Cry 1, and the list goes on for games that were inspired by it. My final verdict for this game is that it's definitely worth a shot. Although clunky and jank in some areas, it is something I would recommend to people who want to see how this series came to fruition, because I personally have much love for this series. If it wasn't for the director, Hideki Kamiya, and his development team not living up to the standards of Resident Evil 4, we definitely would have had a different outcome entirely. I'm glad it did not happen as a Resident Evil game and made Devil May Cry its own series, because to this day, I have great memories and has become one of my favorite series ever. To anyone that has made it this far, I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to watch my video. This is my first time reviewing something in this video format, so sorry if it's jank and I missed anything as well. Leave a comment down below if you want. I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions on this game, and also some criticism on what I could do better, because I want to keep doing stuff like this. It's super fun and I would like to get better at doing it. And with that note, I hope every single one of you have a good day. Thank you for watching.